It's the end of the world and we're all going to die. SkyWatch TV News, June 22nd, 2015. I'm Derek Gilbert. At least that's the takeaway from several reports that have come out following the release of the Pope Francis climate change encyclical last week, Thursday. We'll go through these quickly as we have a lot to cover today. First, Australian scientists claim that global warming is going to make our bread smaller in the future. They conducted an experiment in which they baked loaves of bread under a higher concentration of carbon dioxide, levels predicted for the year 2050 by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the UN's climate change organization. They found that under higher concentrations of CO2, wheat plants grew larger, but the amount of protein in the grains was smaller, which affected the quality of the bread. Now, small wrinkly bread may not be a problem for very long, however. A science writer from Australia predicts that humanity is on the verge of extinction. Engineer and science writer David Auerbach, who was very critical in his recent column about the G7 summit for ignoring climate change and sustainability issues, believes that we're facing the same fate as the Easter Islanders, who disappeared after exhausting the resources on their island and just left behind those giant stone heads. And if that wasn't bad enough, as we go, it appears we're taking the rest of the planet with us. Researchers at Stanford University say that we are officially in the middle of the 6th mass extinction event. The last one, which supposedly happened 65 million years ago, was when the dinosaurs died out following the giant asteroid that hit in the Gulf of Mexico. Although this time, researchers say there is no doubt that humanity is responsible. The research shows that species are disappearing 100 times faster than would normally be expected, and it's because of land cleared for logging, farming, and settlement, the introduction of invasive species by humans moving from place to place, pollution, and of course, carbon emissions, which they say is driving climate change. Now, don't panic just yet. While we agree here at SkyWatch TV that we are to be good stewards of God's creation, I, for one, would like my daughter and whatever future grandchildren, great-grandchildren I might have a clean and healthy place in which to live. The lead researcher of this report from Stanford is Dr. Paul Ehrlich. He was the author of the 1968 book, The Population Bomb, in which he predicted that hundreds of millions of people around the world would starve to death in the 1970s, including 65 million people here in America, that England would no longer exist by the year 2000, that in fact the Earth would exhaust its ability to support humanity by about 1985. Of course, none of those things happened. Dr. Ehrlich still believes the end is nigh and advocates various forms of coercion to discourage people from having children. Now, he's talking about removing tax incentives for families with children, but that, in a sense, is a concern of Ambassador Alan Keyes, former U.S. ambassador and presidential candidate, who responded in an op-ed column to the encyclical on climate change released by Pope Francis last week. Keyes writes that the issue of man-made climate change is being exploited as an excuse to advance a totalitarian agenda for the use or abuse of government power throughout the world. Keyes adds that the agenda Pope Francis seems willing to support, quote, encompasses punitive action near unto genocide against the human race, end quote. Now, why does Ambassador Keyes use the word genocide? As we pointed out last week, John Schnellenhuber, the climate scientist who advised Pope Francis, has previously said that the Earth is overpopulated by about 6 billion people. And the question is, if it's a matter of survival, who gets to decide which 6 billion people have to go? This is a dangerous trend, and Ambassador Keyes is correct. It could result in genocidal tendencies among the global elites if those in power are convinced that the Earth truly is on the brink of disaster and that making hard choices is necessary to preserve the future of humanity and, of course, Mother Earth. It becomes easier to sell the idea of eliminating 6/7 of the world's population, especially as we move into an increasingly post-Christian culture in which human life has no intrinsic value. Case in point, in Belgium, an oncologist, which you probably know is a doctor who specializes in the diagnosis and treatment of cancer, assisted recently in the suicide of a woman who was healthy but depressed. Now, the first her son heard about the woman's desire to end her own life was when the hospital called him to collect her body. As Wesley J. Smith, writing for National Review Online, pointed out, you would think that even supporters of euthanasia would be just a little bit disturbed about a doctor assisting in the death of a patient outside of his medical specialty. Again, the woman was healthy, just depressed. She was killed by her cancer doctor. Instead, this particular doctor was awarded the Liberal Humanist Prize by the Belgium Liberal Humanism Society for his service in causes of humanism. And this is not an isolated incident. In Holland, pediatricians are calling for an elimination of the age limit on euthanasia. Currently, Dutch law prohibits assisted suicide for patients under the age of 12. But the Dutch Pediatricians Association on Friday released a statement and said, "We feel that an arbitrary age limit such as 12 should be changed, and that each child's ability to ask to die should be evaluated on a case-by-case basis." And we should note that under Dutch law, people do not need to be dying in order to request assisted suicide from their physician. Services were held yesterday at the church in Charleston, South Carolina, where 9 people were shot to death during a Bible study on Wednesday night. Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church was packed Sunday morning. Reverend Norval Goff, who conducted the service, said, "No demon on hell or on earth can close the doors of God's church." The accused shooter, 21-year-old Dylan Roth, appeared at a bond hearing on Friday, where he was addressed by families of the victims who said that they forgave him. This is already turning into a political issue, as you would expect. President Obama, Hillary Clinton, already calling for more restrictions on guns. In his monologue Saturday night, comic Bill Maher used the opportunity to take a swipe at Fox News. Protesters in Columbia, South Carolina, Saturday demanded that the Confederate flag be removed from the state capitol there. And a liberal blogger commenting on the flag issue actually wrote, and I quote, "The Confederates were worse than Nazis because at least the Nazis didn't take up arms against their own country." No, only the Jews, physically, mentally handicapped, homosexuals, and political dissidents inside the country. But that's what the enemy wants. They want to get us responding in anger, to keep tearing at each other's throats, rather than taking an example from the families of the victims at Emmanuel AME Church. Quick survey of headlines from the Middle East. Over 100 Islamic State training camps have been identified in Syria and Iraq, 117 to be precise. Not all are active at the moment, but all of them have been operational at one time or another since the beginning of 2012. 37 new camps identified since the beginning of February. The Islamic State has planted landmines and explosives around the historic ruins at Palmyra in Syria. It's unclear whether they plan to destroy the ruins, as they've done with other historic landmarks, or they're just trying to secure the site against Syrian government forces. Turkey's President Erdogan is not happy about the victory last week by Kurdish forces over the Islamic State at Tel Abyad, which is a town in Syria just across the Turkish border. Kurds are no fans of President Erdogan, which may explain why his Justice and Development Party lost 50 seats, a big loss in the Turkish elections June 7th. And Israel has reportedly launched an airstrike into Lebanon to destroy its own drone. The drone crashed in the western Bekaa region of Lebanon, but photos of the drone released online show Cyrillic script, which may indicate that the drone actually originated in Russia or Eastern Europe. As we reported last week, the Roman Catholic Church on May 20th attempted to exorcise the demons from Mexico. A group including an archbishop and a cardinal performed what they called the Exorcismo Magno, or Great Exorcism, at the Cathedral of San Luis Potosi. Dr. Michael Lake, chancellor of Biblical Life College and Seminary, said that this remarkable event may not have any effect.
It's unprecedented in the Word of God. We can drive them out of people, and then if you've been in the deliverance ministry very long, you also realize that they've got to want deliverance before you can really do it. You're almost seeing a dynamic in Mexico with all this. It's almost taking on a manifestation of a Grigori within the populace. And it's interesting to me that they're connecting all of this, connecting it to both abortion, which is politically incorrect in at least in America, of being able to connect it, as well as all the violence that's going on with the cartels down there. And I think there may be some greater theological issues, even more than can we, cast them out of a geographical area, which I don't think you can do.
Dr. Lake adds that a Grigori is like a hive mind, a sort of group mentality that takes over when a population is given over to the wishes of a territorial spirit. But a spirit like that, similar to the princes of Persia and Greece mentioned in chapters 10 and 11 of the book of Daniel, would be far more powerful than a demon. And an exorcism, says Dr. Lake, may only annoy such a spirit and lead to some supernatural blowback on those who participated in the ritual. Dr. Lake will be Tom Horn's guest on SkyWatch TV tomorrow night on the Christian Television Network, and his new article, Examining the Son of Perdition Part 2, appears in SkyWatch magazine, which you can find for free online at skywatchtv.com. Gay marriage is still before the U.S. Supreme Court, and activists are already moving on to the next cause. A new article published in the Emory Law Journal argues that laws limiting civil marriage to couples are unconstitutional. That's right, conservatives who were mocked for claiming that decoupling marriage from its God-given definition of one man and one woman would open the door to polygamy were apparently correct. The Supreme Court is expected to legalize gay marriage nationwide, possibly as early as this week. And disagreement with the LGBT agenda, which is now in some circles LGBTQIAP, may be hazardous to your career. J.P. Morgan Chase, according to Breitbart News, circulated an internal memo recently asking employees to sign up as a gay ally. And it's being hinted to those employees that not signing up will be noted. Among suggestions on this letter, this memorandum, to include LGBT issues in everyday life, employees are encouraged to use more inclusive language, to use words like partner rather than boyfriend or wife, which may be too gender specific. It was 1 year ago that J.P. Morgan Chase sent out a survey to employees that included the questions, are you a member of the LGBT community, and are you an ally of the LGBT community? According to a longtime Chase employee who shared the survey with Breitbart News, this was the first time those questions were ever asked of employees. The disturbing aspect of the survey was that it was not anonymous. Employees returning the survey were required to provide their employee ID number. And the dismantling of God's creation, male and female, was on full display in the nation of Colombia over the weekend. The 6th annual Expo Tattoo event featured the world's top tattoo artists and their work, and was highlighted by an appearance from Maria Jose Cristerna from Mexico, the so-called vampire woman. You see her here, fangs, forked tongue, and subdermal implants around her skull. The son of perdition is coming. Dr. Michael Lake, as mentioned earlier, will discuss his book, The Shinar Directive, on SkyWatch TV tomorrow night. He is Tom Horn's guest, the first of a three-part interview that you'll see on the Christian Television Network. That'll be featured on Dish Network Channel 267 at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. That's UTC-5. Dish Network Channel 267, DirecTV Channel 376, the Glory Star Satellite Channel 117. And if you can't watch the program live, you can see the program at your convenience. The SkyWatch TV Roku channel is very near approval and adding addition to the Roku channel store. But we've got instructions on how you can add the SkyWatch TV Roku channel to your Roku account even before it hits the channel store officially. Log on to skywatchtv.com/Roku. You have comments, questions, or suggestions about this program or about SkyWatch TV in general? I'm happy to take them. Send your email to me anytime, dgilbert@skywatchtv.com. We thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is SkyWatch TV. Now, small wrinkly bread may not be a problem for very long, however. A science writer from Australia predicts that humanity is on the verge of extinction. Engineer and science writer David Auerbach, who was very critical in his recent column about the G7 summit for ignoring climate change and sustainability issues, believes that we're facing the same fate as the Easter Islanders, who disappeared after exhausting the resources on their island and just left behind those. It's the end of the world, and we're all going to die. SkyWatch TV News, June 22nd, 2015. I'm Derek Gilbert. At least that's the takeaway from several reports that have come out following the release of the Pope Francis climate change encyclical last week Thursday. We'll go through these quickly as we have a lot to cover today. First, Australian scientists claim that global warming is going to make our bread smaller in the future. They conducted an experiment in which they baked loaves of bread under a higher concentration of carbon dioxide, levels predicted for the year 2050 by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the UN's climate change organization. They found that under higher concentrations of CO2, wheat plants grew larger, but the amount of protein in the grains was smaller, which affected the quality of the bread. It's appearing 100 times faster than would normally be expected, and it's because of land cleared for logging, farming, and settlement, the introduction of invasive species by humans moving from place to place, pollution, and of course, carbon emissions, which they say is driving climate change. Now, don't panic just yet. While we agree here at SkyWatch TV that we are to be good stewards of God's creation, now, I, for one, would like my daughter and whatever future grandchildren, great giant stone heads. And if that wasn't bad enough, as we go, it appears we're taking the rest of the planet with us. Researchers at Stanford University say that we are officially in the middle of the 6th mass extinction event. The last one, which supposedly happened 65 million years ago, was when the dinosaurs died out following the giant asteroid that hit in the Gulf of Mexico. Although this time, researchers say there is no doubt that humanity is responsible. The research shows that species are